Good morning. Let's see if I can raise this up a little. Katie did it for me last year. Katie, thank you. And by the way, Katie's birthday was last Tuesday, and she didn't tell any of us. So here you go. Happy late birthday. Thank you. That's great. Good morning. My name is Jan Corkern. I'm so glad to see all of y'all. I know most of you. I've been around here for about 5 years, and what a blessing it's been. I think I have a picture that's coming up of my family. I'm thrilled. I was a happy mom Sunday. All my chicks were in one nest. That's my husband, Barry, in the blue suit. My daughter, Lauren, her husband, Zach, our only grandchild, Bo, who's 2, our son, Lawson, and his wife, Rebecca, and they were home from Fort Worth. And I was, again, thrilled to have all my chicks in one nest and thrilled to send Carrie a new picture. In that picture, my husband, myself, Lawson, and Lauren all work in the financial world. And I tell you not to tell you what we do, but to tell you today I'm talking about money, if you didn't know. And I will be the first to tell you, after I've worked in banks, stock brokerage, financial wealth management. If you don't think money affects our relationships, you're really wrong. It's unfortunate. My husband's testified in nearly 200 fraud trials, and money makes people do crazy things. And so if we think it's not going to affect us, our relationships, our marriages, then we're in for surprise. So today we're going to touch upon that. And first off, one of the most important things in our marriage, a financial decision, is right away is choosing to be content with what we have. And that really is a big word, content. And I'll be the first to tell y'all, this lesson, I'm preaching it to myself, okay? Like, I don't have this figured out. We're all works in process, and we all have areas we struggle with. Hebrews 13:5 says, "Keep your life free from the love of money, and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." When I told you a minute ago I was going to speak on money, some of y'all had because emotions are triggered just by that word. You might feel guilt for something you just bought. You might feel pride because you're doing well. We might have shame, or we might have jealousy, excitement, hope, curiosity. And some of us have fear. We have fear that we may lose the money we have, or we have fear that we might not ever have enough. We experience emotions with money, and sometimes we use money to offset our emotions. It's really not just how money makes us feel that we need to think about, but how we make decisions about money when our emotions are heightened. There's something called impulse spending. I don't know if y'all are familiar with it. But it can come from a feeling of dissatisfaction or unhappiness with your life. And just the idea that buying something will make it improve. We feel discontent. The opposite of what Hebrews 13:5 says, we feel discontent. Marketing, if you haven't noticed, relies heavily on this feeling to get us to buy things that we don't really need. Social media surrounds us. I tell my Bloom group all the time, like, I'm so glad when I was a teenager I didn't have social media. Like, it was hard enough just wanting the Calvin Klein jeans that the most popular girl had. But social media surrounds us with pictures and stories and houses and lifestyles that we didn't even know were out there, and then we see them and we think, I think I need that. Well, within our marriage, I want us to stop and think for a minute of you and your husband, because there's a chance we've married opposites. Do either one of you spend money to make yourself feel better? Yesterday, I had a bad day. I'm just going to tell you, Satan did not want me to be here today, and he almost won, and I said, no, you don't win. But during the course of the day, I thought, I just might need new clothes to teach tomorrow. And then I thought, wait, what am I teaching on? I don't need new clothes. Impulsive financial decisions when we're stressed also happen. I don't know if you or your husband have those. I mean, we're not going to mention Amazon, right? What about something more serious, like really large impulsive spending or gambling? When we have these impulsive financial decisions, they really can negatively affect our relationships within our marriage. First of all, there's just the stress of it, adding debt. I mean, when you have an impulsive purchase that you weren't putting in the budget, it sometimes can creep up, or you add it on a credit card, and then before you know it, you're paying interest on that purchase that you didn't really need. What about disrupting the normal decision-making process? If you and your husband have agreed or kind of agreed on how you're going to make buying decisions, and then he or you stops this past weekend and buys a $300 dress or a $400 fishing rod, you took the spouse out of the decision. And then they're stressed. And we're tempted then to maybe withhold information or maybe be really secretive and like, I'll tell him later, or he's going to just let you see the fishing rod and then you're going to figure it out. Well, those things are not good. And we're going to talk more than that in a minute. But why do we do those things? Sometimes we see money and material things as symbols of independence, of, I deserve this. Like, I went to college and I worked, or prosperity, like, hey, I'm an adult. This is part of life and we're doing well. Or status, you see other people with certain things and think that's what I need. It's extremely easy to get caught up, particularly in today's world, in believing that money equals success. Did you hear me say that? Money equals success. That is not what the Bible says. That is what the world is telling us. Are we subconsciously, girls, defining success for our husband by worldly standards? Think about it. Are we thinking, my husband's successful because he just got a promotion and he has this great new title? Or, man, that salary is something. Or, I don't have to worry about retirement because we have the retirement package. So, man, my husband is successful. And it doesn't mean by worldly standards he's not. And it doesn't mean we don't have the right to be happy about those things. But Colossians 3:2 states, Christians should set their minds above earthly things. We can really get caught up in measuring our family and our marriage by how much money we make or our possessions, and then the comparison game starts. And I don't have to tell you about the comparison game because we all know it, right? Matthew 6:21 says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This was a warning that if one's treasure on earth is here, then our heart and attention will be on that earthly treasure, and we can exclude God in the whole process. Our heart represents the deepest part of our souls, our intimate part of ourselves, and the very source of our lives. And treasure represents whatever has the most value to us, what gives us security today and in the future. So I just want us to stop as I'm speaking and think about how you are evaluating your relationship with your husband. And are we valuing his prayer life? Are we valuing his commitment to you, to your family, his role as a dad? Do we value those things as much as we do his value as a provider? Do we encourage him in these areas? Like, maybe we're asking him about work and why are you stressed, or do you think you're going to get a promotion, or are we going to have to move? And again, all those are warranted questions, but are we stopping and asking him to pray with us, to have family devotionals, to worship with us? It's just all food for thought. So how can we invite God into this part of our marriage? Well, part of you are going to squirm because I'm going to use budget. I'm going to use the word budget. People don't like that word. But I am going to say that to sit down with your husband and talk about setting goals, and I don't want to overwhelm you, like little goals, a budget. If your spouse doesn't want to sit down with you and talk about money, then we need to start praying now for God to soften his heart and bring you together on the matter. I'm not going to talk about specific budgets or specific financial goals. There is a multitude of Christian materials out there that you can look up. a lot of good ones. And so there are a lot of tools out there, and even if you're not financially minded, I urge you to try to get together to do that. And then also, we need to ask God's help and ask Him for discipline. So we can pray to God and say, God, I'm impulsive. I know it. I kind of like it sometimes, but it reaps its consequences. So, God, can you help me? Can you help me before I get in the target line? Can you help me so that when I'm standing there, bring questions to my mind, why am I buying this? Or do I really need this? And is this going to make my life better? Or am I going to have to explain it and maybe then wish I didn't have it? Or I might even get home and then bring it back. And I really believe if you ask God to help us with our discipline, He will. He'll step in and He'll bring conviction to our hearts and bring it to our minds. Also, we can identify triggers. I talked about impulsive spending. Some of us, like myself yesterday, we kind of want to spend when we're having a bad day, like poor me. Well, some of us have good days and we're like, woohoo, great day, gonna go celebrate, let's go buy something. We can identify those triggers and think about them ahead of time. Like what triggers your husband, what triggers you, and what is something you can do an alternative. Like maybe confide in a friend. I have a weakness in this area. So if I call you and say, having a bad day, don't need to go to Walmart, don't need to go to the Toggery, wherever, then I just want you to remind me of why I'm telling you this and walk me off the ledge. Take a walk, exercise, dance, read a book. Just focus the shift in what you're wanting to do. Ask God again, intervene on my behalf, God. Don't let that be the first thing that comes to my mind to go spend money. Also, within Bloom each week, we tend to mention addiction. And I just want to remind everyone, if within your marriage, of course, if there's abuse, adultery, or addiction of any type, that sometimes it's just more than you can handle with your spouse. And we do urge you to seek out someone at the church, care team, Bloom leader, get professional help. And it also plays into addiction with money. So gambling, impulsive spending. If you do see and sense a problem within yourself or your husband that is outside the scope of normal or it's creating huge problems, I do urge you to seek professional help. Well, some of you guys are sitting here, and there are a few of you here, I don't know how many, I won't ask you to raise your hand, but you're saying, you know what, my husband and I don't ever argue about money, and we're really content, and I'm really happy for you, I really am, but you're probably in the minority, and so now I'm going to pose the question, okay, you don't argue, and you really are content, are you just keeping your mouth shut, or are you on the same page? I'm going to broach a couple of topics right now. These are first world decisions, and we tend to have large debates within our marriages about them. So when I mention them, I want you to just think for yourself if you feel strongly one way or another, and as you're thinking about it, you'll know, and my husband is right there with me, or he's on the opposite. So renting or owning a home, starting a family, how soon? How many children? You might say 6, and he might say, there is no way we can feed 6 children. Dual income or stay-home mom. Gym membership or working out at home. Hot topic, homeschool, public school, private school. What about this summer? Staycation, family vacation. Driving or flying. Are we going to lease a vehicle or buy a vehicle or have multiple vehicles? What about cell phone plans? And then cell phone plans for our kids. Saving for the future. How much should we spend now? How much do we save? What about all these hobbies and sports and activities our kids do? What is excessive? I want them to do 5 activities, and my husband wants them to do 1 activity. What is too much? What about play money? Free to just spend on what you want. Entertainment. Golf days, spa days, a boat, not a boat, a fishing boat, or a party barge, or rent a boat, or a paddle boat. Elective medical procedures, self-help. How many massages that you want and need in a year, a week. 401ks, Roths, IRAs, retirement plans, and to tithe or not to our church. Wow, how much is too little? How much is too much to spend on these? And guess what? I'm not going to answer that. I'm not here to argue those points. I just wanted you to think about them. And I want to point out that all of us have preconceived expectations about all of those. We have desires, we have dreams and wants that affect those decisions. And there's a lot more that I didn't list. We allow those things to affect our emotions. And guess what? When our views don't match our husband's and our emotions are surging, what does it create? Conflict. Conflict that may come out of our mouths, or conflict that we can harbor internally and have resentment. We cannot assume that our husband agrees with us. We can't assume that one of those things that means so much to us that I mentioned, that just because we grew up that way, that he wants that for our family, or that because we didn't grow up that way and we want it so badly, we can't assume he wants it for our family. We have to communicate, ladies. And I know money and communication, those words form friction. I mean, you just really start thinking about it, and some of you are going, Jan, just hush. I've had enough right now. But really, we have to communicate. So how do we do that? First of all, let's talk about examining our own hearts. Why do I feel so strongly about this financial thing? I mean, why do I really, really want my kids to grow up taking swim lessons every year? Is it because I did that every year growing up and I want it for our kids? Or is it because I didn't get to take swim lessons growing up and I want it for my kids? And I'm not talking about the safety aspect. I'm talking about the expense of it. I'm just something that came to my mind. So what about, I want a boat really badly, but it doesn't fit in our budget, but I really want a boat. And by gosh, I've always said I'm going to have a boat. Well, why do I feel that way? Is it pride? Do I want to be showy, or do I really love boating and it's really important to me? Moreover, am I making my husband feel less than because we can't afford something that I'm wanting? Ouch. I think maybe we've all been there. Maybe something little, something big, I don't know. Your family of origin can affect these thoughts and emotions. And your husband's family of origin can affect his thoughts and emotions. And when his family of origin did things differently than your family of origin, guess what? It can create conflict. And maybe he likes the way your family did it, or you like the way his family did it, or both of you want to abandon the ways your families did it. But sometimes it does create havoc because that was your expectation coming into the marriage. And although you talked about so many things before you got married, you really didn't talk about some things. How do we examine our hearts then biblically? Like, see for ourselves? Well, Psalm 139, 23 through 24 in the NIV says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." We need to ask God to give us eyes to see ourselves. We need to see what our husband's thoughts and emotions are, but we need to look in ourselves and have God reveal to us, what does he want us to change? But we need his power to change it. So we're going to have to go to him and say, God, can you show me areas of my heart with regard to finances that are not of you? And God, can you please help me change those ways? Philippians 2:13 says, "For it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure." So he tells us right then, Lord, he will work in us. He will. We just have to invite him in. Second thing would be sharing financial goals. Again, I know budget, talking, I'm stressing some of you out, and I'm sorry. But maybe your husband has financial goals. Maybe some of you do. Are they the same goals? How can you achieve them together? At the creation of man and woman, unity for them in marriage was not given as hope. It was a command God gave us. And He wants our hearts to be knit together in our marriage. And really, that includes all facets of marriage. So he wants us to be knit together, and we can't carve finances out and say we are perfectly in alignment except for our spending. Genesis 2:24 says, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." Again, he wants us to be knit together. So girls, let's sit down. Maybe not when the kids are fussing and everyone's tired, but honey, I haven't really sat down and talked to you about our finances. And also, maybe you're the one in the family who handles all the finances, and maybe he needs to know what's going on. It can go either way. But we need to sit down and we need to talk about, do you have any idea how much the electricity bill is? How much we're spending eating out? How much or little we're spending and allocating to saving? How much are we giving away? And then what about, do you within your family, within your marriage, have an agreed upon amount that if you're out shopping or he's out shopping, if it's over a certain level, then you're going to have a mutually agreed amount that says, I will not spend that unless I consult with you. That is a really good something to implement within your marriage if you haven't already. It kind of sets a baseline for anything below that. Don't go crazy, but certainly if it's might be $500 in your marriage, it might be $35 in your marriage, but whatever that agreed upon amount is, I can't buy that without consulting with you. And it's also good for your kids to see you model that. They want this, they want that. And, Dad and I have talked about it, and we just don't buy things just because. And certainly if it's this amount, we talk about it as a husband and wife before we will spend that kind of money on something. It's really great when you start talking to your spouse to understand each other's priorities and perspectives, because you're young. Maybe you haven't been married that long, but it doesn't go away. And life kind of even gets a little more complicated as you get older with regards to finances. So it's really great to start now, if you haven't, just little steps at a time and understand where they're coming from and their perspectives. Lastly, get an understanding of your financial situation, if you haven't already, your income, your debts, your investments. It's really important for both of you to understand. It's unfortunate, but death and disability does happen. And when we put our heads in the sand and think it's never going to happen, in our business, we have seen so many people just be absolutely clueless, and it just makes the aftermath of that a lot harder if you don't know where pieces of information are. Thirdly, let's be transparent. Be transparent with our husbands and be transparent with ourselves about our disappointments, our financial disappointments. Are we harboring financial disappointments? Are we disappointed that I thought by 2023 we would live here, or I thought by 2021 I would drive this, or I thought by 2024 we would be out of debt, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. We have to be transparent with what we spend. A really great way to mess up a marriage is trying to hide spending. And again, I've seen stories that would break your heart. Secrets that are created are harmful to our marriage because it breaks trust, and financial secrets are no different. We have to have trust in our marriages. So to harbor financial secrets, I'm just telling you, ladies, it will just come back and bite us every time. So the last thing I have here on communication is certainly not last, but foremost. Again, I keep referencing it, but pray. Ask God to guide you and your husband with regards to every financial decision, job changes, which school to go to, what type of school, dual income or not, large expenditures, attitudes. Pray and pray and pray. So as we're thinking of our money and how we've spent it and how we're going to spend it, let's talk about being good stewards of what God has given us. The Lord warns us that we cannot serve two masters. We have to choose between serving Him and serving material possessions. And it's, again, so easy to get caught up in trying to keep up with our neighbors, our family, other family members and friends. We can get so fixated on our salaries, our bonuses, how many zeros are in or not in those numbers. And it's so easy for life to get overrun with debt now. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still getting credit card applications for Lawson, who's been living in Texas for 5 years. And occasionally one comes in for Lauren, and she's 33 and hasn't lived with us in a really long time. Everybody wants you to have their credit card, and debt is rampant right now. But God really doesn't want this for us, and he wants more for us. He literally gives verses in the Bible, instructs us on how to handle our treasures. Luke 16:11 says, "So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches?" And in 1 Timothy 6:10, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." A lot of times growing up, that verse stops. We see it stop right there. But the next part says, "Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." So think about that. What kind of evils stem from money that cause us to have a lot of grief? Shoplifting, embezzlement, larceny, gambling, blackmail. I mean, that's just a few. The list goes on and on. Opposite of that, examples of good stewardship would be living within our means, spending money that we already have, not counting the chickens before they hatch. Like, I think we're going to be getting a large bonus in December, so I'm going to go ahead and make this large purchase, and then we'll kind of pay ourselves back. But instead, spend what we have. Save for the future, skipping out on wasteful purchases. Keep good records. You and your husband need to figure out which one of us is going to be the record keeper. Like, it's really important that we have good records so that we each know what's going on. Proverbs 24:3-4 says, "By wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established. By knowledge the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches." Get educated, again, on your matters in your household. Running a household is not a business, but it's you're managing your household. And somebody has to know all the parts of managing that household. Proverbs 14:15, "The simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps." So again, being content and being prudent about the next steps that you're going to take financially. Well, there's so much that could be said about money. I mean, when Carrie gave me this topic, literally a tsunami of information started coming to me. But rather than seeing the goal of our marriage as the accumulation of things, we should focus first on building a strong team relationship and seek God first. I think there's going to be a verse up here. This verse is 1 Corinthians 13:1-13. These verses have been read at many weddings, maybe your own. "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but to have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful." So that last sentence, let's reflect on that again. It does not insist on its own way. So think again to some of those strongholds we have about opinions of what we want for our family financially. And remember, we don't insist on our own way. The world's telling us, you get married, you get a job or jobs, you get a house, 2.3 children, 2.3 cars. The list goes on, lake houses. And again, I'm not beating up on any of that. God gives great gifts and blesses people. But the world's telling us more, more, more. And the Bible is telling us differently. Rather than being owners of all that, y'all, we are renters in this world. We are just taking care of what God has given us. We brought nothing into the world, and we can't take anything out of the world. It says so in 1 Timothy 6:7. No matter how big our dreams are, and again, it's okay to dream. It's fun to dream. It's fun to set goals. But we have to remember to be content now. The God of the universe is here for you and me, and it's more than enough. And if we get caught up in chasing for the future, we can truly miss seeing the blessings that we have right before us that God has provided. Yesterday, when I was having such a bad day, I opened a devotion and I read this, and it was so applicable. We live in an age of entitlement, so you need to counteract the messages proclaiming that you deserve more. One way is to jot down some things you're thankful for each day. This changes our focus from things we wish we had to blessings we already have. So if I leave you today with something, it is, again, let's try to be content. Let's give our finances over to God. Let's be transparent with our husbands. And let's be thankful for what we have. And sometimes it's so easy to lose sight of the things we already do have. Let's pray. Dear God, I just thank you today for the privilege of coming to Bloom. I thank you for every one of these young women who made the decision to get up this morning and to come in spite of any hardships they had. I thank you for the young moms, the women, the wives, the sisters, the friends that they are. And I just ask as they go home tonight and this week that you will impart with them on their heart things they might want to change about themselves, but also how to do better in the world of finances and how to approach the subject with their husbands, and that their husbands would have a soft heart and listening ears. We thank you, and I thank you for all the wonderful many blessings you have given us. In your name we pray. Amen.